Hi there, welcome back. We are going to do a little at-home experiment. Once again, here are the materials you're going to need from your kit. So our first cup is the antacid tablet that you crunched up and have in there. In your second cup, we're just going to fill that with some water. It doesn't need to be an exact amount. I would say maybe half full or so. You will need your pH paper strips, your straw, one of your droppers. If you tried the oil experiment last week with the penny, don't use the oil dropper, use the water dropper. And then you've got your glass jar with the vinegar. All right, so the first thing we're going to need to grab is the pH paper strips. So I gave you, I think, 4 of them, just to make sure that we don't run out in case you need to repeat anything. Go ahead and tear those right in half. We're going to use them for several different tests. And again, just in case we have to redo one, let's go ahead and tear them in half so that we have plenty. And then you're going to separate them and grab one. In general, with pH strips, you want to try to not touch them more than you need to. So we're just going to separate one and then make sure the others are off to the side or maybe even back in your Ziploc where they will stay dry. All right, so I'm going to test the pH of this water. We know that water should be neutral with a pH of 7. Because it's not an acid or a base, it's perfectly neutral. However, we're dealing with tap water, and so sometimes tap water isn't necessarily pure, which means its pH isn't necessarily 7. So we want to figure out where we are starting. So I've got one of my pH paper strips, one of the halves. I'm just going to dip it in the edge and immediately take it right out. What we want to notice is the color of the strip. To read the pH strip, I'm going to now compare it with this color chart. So this color chart is included with the strips. Unfortunately, you don't have it there, but I do have a photo there for you. Your best guess, is it more orangish? That would be closer to a 6. Is it more greenish? That would be a 7. For me, as I look at this, I think it's somewhere in between. So I'm probably going to call mine a 6.5. So with your color strip, go ahead and compare it to the chart you see. What color is it closest to for your result? Now for our next test, we are going to use some of this water, and we will take 1 pipette full and add it to the crushed antacid tablets. That pH strip that you just used is now done. Go ahead and set that off to the side. They are test strips you can only use once, so we are done with that one. Go ahead and fill up your dropper. If you squeeze the bulb and slowly release, it should fill up with some water. We're going to add that to your cup with the crushed up antacid tablets. We just want to create kind of a little bit of a paste in order to get the pH. It has to have some liquid in there. So that's what we're doing, is just mixing that powder with a tiny bit of water to create a paste. But you don't want to touch the dropper down into the antacid tablet, just kind of sprinkle it over the top. All right, for this next part, I want to test the pH of this mixture of the antacid powder and water. I've kind of swirled it around a little bit to try to mix it a little bit better. And so I've got another little pH strip. I grabbed some tweezers to try to reach the end of the cup a little bit better. You could use a piece of tape and stick it to the end of a pencil, or even maybe some kitchen tongs. So you want to dip this down to the bottom without dropping it, and then pull it right out just like we did with the water to start. All right, so here it is. I'm going to kind of wipe off the end of it a little bit. There is my color. I want to look at the end, where it's darkest. And when I compare it to my color chart, if it's greenish, it's going to be closer to an 8. A little bit more of a blue tint, a 9. So as I look at this, I'm going to say it's probably closer to a 9. If it's definitely all blue without any green, then it would be a 10. But for me, I see some green in there, so I am going to call this a 9. Go ahead and take a look at your color and make your best guess. Is it all green? That's an 8. A little bit of a bluish tint, that's a 9. All blue, we're going to call that a 10. Now that you've recorded the pH of your antacid tablets, you should notice that it's definitely in the higher range. So remember, things that are above 7 are a base, things that are lower than 7 are an acid. What I have now is my glass jar that has vinegar in it. I've grabbed a new pH strip, so another one, and I'm going to do the same thing, just dip in the end and pull it right back out, and should be somewhere in this range, close to a reddish. As I look at my color chart again, I'm thinking probably closest to a 3. So you go ahead and try yours and see what color you get, compare it to our color chart, and then record your pH. All right, so hopefully you found that your vinegar is on the lower end of the pH scale, meaning that it's an acid. Your antacid tablets are on the higher end of the scale, meaning that they are a base. So what happens when an acid mixes with a base? For this next part, I'm going to take my pipette. You just had water in this. Now we're going to squeeze the bowl, lower it into the vinegar, and slowly release, draw up a full pipette. And now we're going to take that over to our cup with the antacid tablet and drizzle it in. And listen carefully. Do you hear some fizzing? Do you see some bubbles forming? Let's go ahead and try that one more time. Grab another pipette full and drizzle it in. You see the bubbles? Do you hear it fizzing? All right, take a moment to record some observations of what do you see, what do you hear happening in the cup. All right, now that you've got your observations recorded, we want to go ahead and test the pH now. Remember, the antacid started at a 9. So with a new pH strip, again, I'm going to use tweezers to dip it down, just get the end in there. All right, as I dip in the pH strip, here's what I get. Kind of an orangish color. So as I look at my chart, maybe a 5-ish, somewhere in between a 5 and a 6. In fact, it looks kind of close to where I started with my tap water. Go ahead and dip yours in and see what color does it match for you, and record your result. Okay, so now that you've got your results recorded for the acid-base reaction, the last thing we want to do is take a look at what happens to natural things when they're exposed to an acidic environment. So we know that ocean acidification is something that's happening, and what effect does that have on living things in the ocean? So the antacid tablet is made of sodium bicarbonate, and that's actually the same thing that we find in things like seashells. So you should have a couple seashells in your kit. We're going to now take one of those seashells and carefully place it in the jar of vinegar. and we'll go ahead and put the lid on there and let it sit for a little while. This is going to sit for a few days. We'll come back and check on it, make any observations, anything that you see happening over time. The other seashell that you have, that's going to go in your cup of water. So that serves as our control, as our comparison. So as we check on the one in the vinegar after a few days, we'll also check on the one in the water. So in your cup of water, we'll go ahead and add your other seashell. Now, you don't have the luxury probably of having a digital scale, but I went ahead and used a digital scale to weigh both of the seashells before placing them in there, and then I will weigh them when they are done as well. But just take a notice of your seashell that's in the vinegar. What do you see? I'm guessing you see a few little bubbles. So take a moment to record initial observations of what the seashell looks like as it's sitting in the vinegar. Okay, so for the next step, the question is, how does the ocean become an acid? We added vinegar, but it's not that vinegar is being added to the ocean. How is it that our oceans are becoming acidified? So remember what we've learned about carbon dioxide and climate change and the effect of carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, and that some of that, actually a lot of that CO2 is getting dissolved into our oceans. So we want to test the effect of CO2 added to water. Well, we know that as we exhale CO2. You've got a straw. So this cup, I would suggest making it about half full of water so you don't bubble over. But we're going to blow bubbles through the straw into the water for about 60 seconds. So if you want to maybe set a timer on your computer or set a timer on your phone for 60 seconds, you're going to blow bubbles. Here we go.